Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 133rd episode of the Diverse Minds podcast. And March is all about focusing on supporting women, raising women up, and remember the women that have been forgotten. And today we're going to be talking about how men can be true allies for women in the workplace and beyond across all cultural backgrounds. And to join me in doing this is Susan Popola. Susan has a first degree in political science. In addition, she's achieved diplomas in personnel management and the art of systems thinking. She has a postgraduate diploma in human resources with a specialism in organisational consultancy and a master's in human resources strategy and change. She's a member of both the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, the CIPC, and a member of the Milton Keynes branch of the British Chamber of Commerce. She's also a Common Purpose graduate, a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and a Windsor Castle Society of Leadership Fellow. Susan has experience of working on projects from the private, public and voluntary sectors, including Arup, Woolley Parsons, Department of Health, London Fire Service and the Royal Festival Hall. She has a focus on HR strategy and change, talent management, performance management, succession planning, diversity and inclusion. And she's previously worked as a youth worker and a business ambassador for Youth Enterprise. She was in fact a founding board member and committee chair on a school board for 10 years. And she now also conducts work within education and runs programs for young adults. So Susan uses her skills and capabilities to leverage the value of people in the world of work, society that we live in, and through the education and integration of younger generation. Susan refers to this as human value optimization. She's going to be talking about that more, as well as how men can be true allies. So Susan, a huge welcome to the show.
Thank you, Layla. It's nice for you to have me. I must say, I have come across your podcast and your work. I'm quite impressed by it. And so I feel it's a privilege to be here today.
Oh, that's so kind. And it's a real privilege to have you. And I was reading out your bio and what you do and the work that you've done and the incredible CV that you have. But I think it'll be really lovely for listeners to hear from you about a bit more about yourself and what you do.
Okay. Well, I'm Susan. That's Susan Popola. I refer to myself as a human value optimization specialist. And I guess when I say that, you'll say, what's that? And it really and truly is. It's based on who I am and what I believe. Because growing up, I was taught everyone has value, something to offer. It doesn't matter who they are, whether it's someone in a key work role, someone leading an organization, or even a nation. Everyone is important, has something to offer, has value. And so consciously and subconsciously, I've carried that through life, and it reflects in what I do and my belief that with that value, there are two key things that need to come to play. One is people need to recognize the value that they have to offer. And at the same time, people around them, whether you're talking about the workplace, education, or wider society, need to recognize the value that people bring. One without the other, we're limited. The two combined means that people's value is optimized. And I guess I do three key things, and it comes to play in those different environments. I work with organizations, so very much human resources, organization development, talent management, which definitely takes account of the diversity of the world that we live in. I also work with young people, and that is very much helping them to better recognize who they are and what they have to offer. And then I write, and so I've written a few books. That's me in a nutshell.
Oh, I know. It's brilliant. It's amazing all the things that you do and that you have done. And so how did you sort of niche in and really become a human value optimization specialist? What was your journey towards that and explaining your vision to others and getting other people on board?
So the whole thing about value is a representation of who I am. I very early on in my career, started working in human resources, very much working my way up from the admin level to a much more senior role, getting involved in different projects, working cross-sector across different organizations, small, large, I mean, you name it. I really and truly worked cross-board. At the same time, I've always been drawn to work within community with a specific focus around young people, and also to explore the world we live in. I'm a very inquisitive person, so travel, curiosity about people. I've never lost a why. So I think all of those things came together. And so working with organizations, at the same time working within community, youth work, school governor, different things along the way, and also doing some writing as well. So as I said, written 3 books. I think my second book is key. My second book is Consequences, Diverse to Mosaic Britain. And it was a reflection of our rich diversity. But the idea of a mosaic is you only get the true value of that diversity when we all come together to create something which is just like a mosaic piece of art. But that mosaic, but those pieces don't stick together without glue. And that's how common purpose, common values, common interests all come into play. And that's permeated through my work increasingly over time. And I would say my vision is to create what I call a mosaic world, where everyone is valued for who they are and what they have to offer. And as I said, increasingly that has informed what I do, and it's reflected in my brand. So my work with organizations is Mosaic Fusions. My work with young people, Mosaic Wise, as like in that young people are wise to who they are and their place in the world. And I talk about Mosaic Gold when I talk about my writing.
That's very beautiful, Susan. It's very poetic and it's very collaborative and collectivist in its spirit.
It almost has to be. Because we can't do it alone. No one can do it alone. We seem to lose the sense of the greater good, the collectivity that enables us to be most effective. I can go and do what I want to do and try and achieve success, but no one really succeeds by themselves. No organization, everyone has an important role within an organization. So it's really recognizing that, it's observing the world, observing different environments, and recognizing that we are much better together than apart.
Yeah. And that's so important. Like, no person is an island, right? So exactly. That's a very famous saying. So then thinking about allyship, Susan, in this term, and I think it has been personally very overused in many workplaces, particularly as we saw after the June 2020 movement of Black Lives Matter. But what does the term allyship mean to you in this context of men being allies to women?
It means them taking time to understand. First and foremost, us actually step back. It means men caring about women, recognizing that they have a place, thinking that these women have value. How can I support them? How can I engage them, coming alongside them and enabling them for the benefit of women, but for the benefit of the wider work environment or wider society as well. So in very simple terms, that's how I would define it.
Thank you. And I think it's a shame we have to have these conversations. Not that I'm not thoroughly enjoying it and you're so sage and wise, but how can men really be true allies and park fear to one side? And what do you think the biggest challenges are for men acting in the way that you've just described and outlined?
Funny enough, in many ways, there are 2 key things. One is not understanding how it's different for women. understanding how women typically, and I emphasize typically, think differently from men, because we've all got our feminine and masculine traits. Women tend to lean more towards the feminine, men towards the masculine, but we can slide along the scale and adapt based on need, or even based on who we are as people, what we're most comfortable with. I think a lot of men don't understand the strength and the power of the skills, the capabilities, the value that women bring. And when women don't demonstrate the more masculine skills, the approach that men take, everything I say, it's a generalization. Some don't recognize that actually a woman doesn't do this, but she does bring something else to the fore, which is equally as important as to what a man might be bringing to the environment. Often there's a lack of understanding of the structures within the environment and how that leans towards the way in which men typically navigate. And if you want me to, I can talk about examples of these things. But so that one, there's the lack of understanding of the differences, the lack of valuing what it is that women do bring, not understanding the barriers, and at times having a fear, one, to ask the questions to understand, but also a fear of being displaced.
So really quite similar themes that we see, don't we, in anti-racism work, or the lack of reason around why people step up. But I think it would be great to hear some examples, Susan, if you're happy to share some with us.
Okay. So as you know, I've written a book recently, Male Perspectives on the Value of Women at Work. And I interviewed a number of different men, asking them about the value that women bring to the work environment and the things that get in the way, both in terms of the things that women do or don't do, and the things that men do and the structures within the work environment. So with that in mind, I just use some of the key learnings to demonstrate a bit of what I'm talking about. When it comes to applying for a job, I suspect you might have heard before. Mm-hmm. A role has, let's say, 10 competencies. A man looks and he says, I've done 5 or 6 of these, or actually, I've done 5 of these before. I should be able to do 2 or 3, but the others, I don't even know what they are. But I'm going to apply anyway. And he puts himself forward. A woman typically would look at it differently. She's done 8 or 9 before, but there's one that she hasn't done, isn't sure that she's competent in. So she's less likely to go forward for that role. And you can say from that, well, that she should just go forward, put herself forward. Why shouldn't she? That's not the typical thinking, because some might say it's a more honest response or more conservative response, but she's less likely to. So if you look at that as a starting point as to how a male or female, man or a woman might look at things differently, then how does a man respond if he has that knowledge? But as I said, that's the starting point. You then get to the place where, let's say, both a man and a woman have applied for a job. An offer is made. They're just as good as each other. The man says, the organization says, we'd like to offer you the job. It's 40,000. The man is likely to say, thank you very much for your offer. However, I've done my research, and based on my findings, I believe I should be getting 60,000. Probably won't get the 60, but he will get more than the 40. So let's just say he gets his 50,000. The woman, on the other hand, is more likely to say, thank you very much, I appreciate that, and take 40,000 as a starting point. So you have that disparity going in. There's then how the two parties navigate within the environment. And it goes on and on from there. And if you, one of my contributors spoke about the conscious leader. So when we talk about men and we talk about allyship, I would say there's a need for men to be more conscious in their approach, to recognize that actually a woman who's just as good is less likely to ask for more, because she's probably thinking, you're going to do the best by me without me having to negotiate, because if you're offering me 40, that's what's affordable, and you've got to think of everyone else. Whereas the man is more likely to think in the me, in the I. And it goes on from there. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you talked about consciousness, but also how much of this is so ingrained in society, and what might we need to do around this? So around who's deserving, who's not deserving, from a really basic level. And I've seen it across all cultures. Initially, I thought it was quite a predominant issue in South Asian culture, but I have spoken to friends and colleagues from all different cultural backgrounds, and we talk about this, that, who gets served their food first, often, who gets the priorities, and just this culture around how men seem to be more deserving. So what role can we all play in that if we're thinking about this allyship and shifting systems?
So as I said, first is being conscious. So for men, just men generally, to be conscious of that, to recognize that it's not that women don't have things to offer. We're almost conditioned in a way. There's something about entitlement.
Yeah.
And entitlement has almost become a negative word. It's not. It's just like when we say you're privileged, it's almost comes across as negative, but it's not. Privilege, entitlement, it's how you respond. So there's a need for the recognition that in the work environment, men do have the typically they feel more entitled, especially the white middle class man. They are more, they have a confidence walking in through the door. And that means that it's easier for them to ask for more. It's easier for them to ask for the promotion, the salary increase, and what have you. So people leading in an organization need to be aware of this and not just go with the man, or the man asked, but also to say, well, who else is there? Because there's the gender aspect, but it goes beyond that to culture and other areas as well. So to go beyond who is asking to who else is there that might be equally deserving. So that's where men, most especially men in leadership positions, can show their allyship. They can also do that by sponsoring, nurturing, mentoring, supporting women, to get them to approach things differently, recognizing the system and the structures, how things work. There is the wider factor of organizations looking at their structures and how their structures are biased towards men, people that feel confident to ask and review those things as well.
Thank you, Susan. And thinking about, you touched on cultural differences there, but how do you think culture and gender divides can be crossed and understood? Because of course, not all women want to be sponsored and allied in the same way. So there'll be cultural understandings around that, and not all men will want to be allies in the same way. So I wonder if there's anything you want to expand on in terms of culture and gender and the way they come together in this allyship context.
As you said, we are all different. We speak about the diversity, and that comes to play in different forms. So if you start off by talking about women, we come from different cultures. There are a diversity of cultures that impact the way we're brought up and the way we present, the way we navigate whatever environment we're in. Because we've been nurtured in certain ways. There's the social economic dynamics that comes to play, the sexual orientation, the ability, the way we think. I mean, so there are so many factors that inform us, who we are, what we're comfortable with. So taking account of the culture, you could easily say, well, women should find allies in men from the same cultural background as them, or even some women would say actually they want to be mentored or supported by women. There's something in that, but I will also say there's also something in actually going beyond that comfort zone of having allies outside, or because you don't just have to have one person who's sponsoring you, mentoring you, or serving as your ally. You can have a number of different people in your, what I would call your support structure. And there is value in not just having people from the same background that understand your culture, but also having people from a different culture, especially, should I say, the majority cultures, because while you have your support structure system around you, you still need to be able to navigate and interact with other people yourself. So there is that value in having people outside of that natural comfort space of your culture. But then it becomes important for people from different cultures, let's say as an ally, serving as an ally from someone with a different culture, to recognize that this person, this woman, will think differently, see things differently, engage differently from a woman from your own culture or background. And so the key is to be curious, treat each person as an individual and not assume, to be able to ask the questions. And I would also put a little bit of responsibility on the female as well, to take the time to explain how she might be different from what the man might be used to. It's not always obvious. So those are some of the key things that come to mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I really like your point about being curious and to be able to also give information to someone who might need to understand. It's not about divulging everything, but what you feel comfortable with sharing to help that sponsorship or mentorship journey in terms of allyship and someone understanding where your starting point is.
Yep. In fact, you've stolen because I always talk about us being on a journey. Mm-hmm. We're all on a journey. Each and every one of us are on a journey. And there's where we might believe people should be. And there's the understanding that we might think they should have. They don't always. And if they don't, then it doesn't really it's not productive to talk to them from the position that we expect them to be in. It makes sense to have a better understanding of where people are and to journey together from the point that they're at. And you actually reach the destination much faster and easier that way.
That's so lovely, Susan. Thank you so much. So lots of ideas and tips. And, this work that you do, it's not always easy. It's emotionally draining. You're really invested in it. It's absolutely core to who you are. So how do you look after your own mental health, Susan? What are your top 3 tips?
I'm very clear. I know who I am and what I do, why I do it. I'm purpose driven. That means I'm less likely to be distracted by people, what's going around me. So I think that's key, knowing who you are, knowing your why, and remaining focused on that. I am very much still learning to be kind to myself, because having a clear purpose and focus your expectations of self can be very high. And I joke at times and talk about the marks on my back from when I've beaten myself up for not doing things and getting things wrong. But I think it's fair to say I've moved around from that, and I learned to appreciate the little things that I do that all come together to mean something big. I talked earlier about journeys, appreciating my own journey. And then the third thing is I have a very good support system. I have friends, allies, supporters of my own who will kindly tell me when I'm getting things wrong, but most important of all, will support me. Cheer me along the way. And at times I'll run an event or do something and I'll call up a friend who may have been involved or who's not even there and just talk through, this is what I've done, this is how I felt about it. And even when I do that, even the things I feel might not have been too good, I find out actually it was much better than I thought it was. So as I said, knowing myself, what I'm about, staying focused on that, being kind to myself and having a good support system around me.
Thank you. I love the way you said, well, I don't love the sort of concept of the marks on your back from, but it's true, isn't it? Like the invisible marks and how we can be our own biggest critic and enemy sometimes.
Exactly. And but when you stop and you really look at what you do, you find that you're actually a lot better than you think. Definitely just as good as everyone else, especially when you're doing that which you're passionate about and what you enjoy. I mean, as I said, that aligns to your purpose and what you believe in. I journal as well. And one thing I also do is when people say positive things, either in conversation or put it in writing, I have a little book and I put all those things down in writing. And so on those days that I'm questioning myself, especially if I can't get hold of someone in my support network, I can go back to my journal, my book, and see the things that people have said to help me to continue going.
Yeah, I call it a success file. I have a little, I put emails into it. Yeah, success journal or success file. It's a really lovely thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Susan, thank you so much for your time. And I'll include the links in the show notes. But if people want to know more about you, your work, they want to work with you, how should they contact you?
The best way of getting hold of me is www.mosaicworld.live.
Fab. Any social media handles or anything else you want to share?
I am on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and if you just Susan Popola, just spell my surname. It's just Popoola. And if you search any of those social medias, you'll find me. I'll come up there just by my name.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, do check out Susan's book, her work that she does, the Mosaic website. It's really interesting perspectives. Thank you so much. Consciousness, collectivity, collaboration, connection. And this is how we are going to shift things in the right direction. So thank you so much, Susan, for your wisdom and insights.
Thank you very much for having me, Layla. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Brilliant. And we'll see you everyone in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.